Spy Cops Info Podcast, a series on the secret undercover political police that infiltrated over 1,000 groups since 1968. Episode 33, Shitface, the former Conservative councillor Andy Coles. Welcome to the Spy Cops Info Podcast. My name's Tom Fowler and I'm joined with
Jessica from Police Spies Out of Lies, but also one of the women CPs from the inquiry.
We're back in the inquiry soon and you're going to give evidence.
Yeah, well, it's only been 7 years in the run-up. Apparently 25th of November, so I've been told, but that is all subject to change, possibly.
As everything we ever hear from the undercover policing inquiry is massively subject to change.
Yes.
So is it a full day?
They've just given me the 1 day's date. I don't know, I hope it doesn't go on too long,
Sure.
to be perfectly honest. I guess they're going to take my testimony and then later on that week or possibly the following week they'll be asking Shitface. Sorry, Coles. I've got to get used to saying that.
I think you can always call him Shitface, right?
I guess it's like this, you don't name the perpetrator sort of thing. So I avoid saying his name as much as possible. So for most parts, I mean, particularly during like legal meetings, it is Shitface. Everyone knows him, even the lawyers and the barristers, you know, refer to him as Shitface. I probably shouldn't say that, but they do. Yeah, because I just don't want to say his name. So I can't imagine that the meeting is going to be particularly happy. So I need to start practicing calling him former Conservative councillor Andy Cole. I need to get that to practice. Practice that one.
Yeah, former Conservative councillor, because he did lose, thankfully, at the last local elections.
To an 18-year-old girl.
That's poetic.
Yeah, I couldn't have written that better myself.
You've had a bunch of disclosure lately, so you need to be careful about what you can say and can't say. This is the thing we come across a lot with the inquiry is we start finding out stuff and we want to publicise it, but we can't until we've actually gone through the process.
It's slightly ridiculous because it's my life and it's my past, it's my story, but there's lots of things I'm not supposed to say. But then there's been so much, and it's such a mindfuck. I don't know what I've said, what Shitface has said, former Conservative councillor Andy Coles has said, and what's in disclosure. So yeah, it's quite difficult. But then the thing is, lots of it's going to be made public anyway.
Yeah.
Including things that I didn't think were going to be made public. For instance, when I first made a complaint against Conservative councillor Andy Coles, and I had to make what they call an ABE interview, so I think it's acquired best evidence. So essentially it's like a rape interview. So you go to the police station and you get into this little carpeted room with women officers and they record you and they video you and ask you every intimate sexual question that they can think of, and it's quite an ordeal. It was 4.5 hours worth of embarrassing, awful sexual detail and that, and it's use the words. But it was horrible. And then to me, the Met Police have given that interview that I did over to the inquiry with graphic personal details in it. And they handed it over to the inquiry. And they didn't tell me this until it came out in disclosure. So I was disclosed this interview and it was hard to read.
Does that mean that former Conservative councillor Andy Coles has also had an interview disclosed to him?
Yeah, they would have given it to him and his lawyers. Basically, the whole point of us giving evidence is CPs is we said it's not right for us to give our evidence until we've seen the evidence that the police have made. So we've seen their interviews and their documents. Then we will give our evidence after that. So that was how it was agreed. The inquiry agreed that, and that was how it's going to be. But it seems like in my case, because I made a statement before, so all of my evidence, so everything I've ever said about him and about our relationship and the intimate sexual details, all of that was passed over to Shitface, to former Conservative councillor Andy Coles, before he wrote his statement. The inquiry is the gift that keeps on giving, and that knocks me back a bit, really, because it's sometimes things that he knew. There's a letter that he sent me when I was living abroad, with sexual references in one of the letters and I mentioned this in the interview, and I don't think I've spoken about it otherwise. It's not really something that I particularly wanted to say. It was strange at the time. It seemed a bit out of context for the way that he used to write to me. But I mentioned it in the interview, and then of course he can make response to it, but I probably wouldn't have mentioned it otherwise. I wouldn't have wanted to talk about it because it's just awkward And so I probably wouldn't have brought it up, but now it's the inquiry knows it for people that don't know reading it. And although I've been as open as I can be for the whole of every interview that I've done and stuff, I've had to give an awful lot of my background and my life and the things that have happened to me. And so it's been quite intrusive anyway, but this was like a whole another level. And to think and then to not know who's going to be able to see it. The worst thing is it went to former Conservative councillor Andy Coles.
Is that a shithead?
Shitface. Yeah. You're not helping.
I don't want to get confused.
You're not helping. Yeah, it went to him. But then it's also, I've got to sit and give evidence, and that knowing that Missing has read it, and I'm pretty sure that Missing would be embarrassed, were I reading about his sexual relationship and like the awkwardness and everything around that. It's not nice, and it feels like this inquiry is, I guess it's the same for a lot of people, but it does for me. It goes to a lot of places that I'm not comfortable really going, but because this stuff has been disclosed, I've had to sort of prepare myself to just. It is what it is, and I've just got to accept it. And that's difficult, but I don't know, I just think worse things happen to other people, and that's...
Shit, though, bro. Fucking hell. Yeah, worse things happen, it's not... It's obscene. Mate, that is so obscene that's happened that way. The police gave the footage of that interview to the inquiry, and then the inquiry gave it to Coles.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's actually the video, but right. I think there's 3 different documents. So there is like a note-taking one, there is a transcription, and there's also some, I think it's some automated... some bizarre automated recording of it where it's written down, but it's a bit like when AI does subtitles, so it's like I think the worst one is the Chinese Year of the Whore. It's the Chinese New Year of the Horse. So yeah, it's got all these. I think at one point it says something about I lost my jawbone, which actually I lost my job, and somehow it made it into something else. But yeah, so there's 3 documents, and having to read through that. And that was the worst part, is having to go over and over things again. It is re-traumatising to go over it the first time, but then when you've got multiple documents coming, then when you've got to read them again because there's redactions that I want to make, but then it's also I have a mind that because of the secrecy in the inquiry itself is like I feel like everything should be in the open. So but that in itself is sacrificing my own privacy, because I just think this is what needs to be in public. So therefore I feel a lot of my stuff has to be in public. So actually initially I think I asked for any questions that they wanted to ask me that were going to be like intimate questions to be in private. In the end I've just said, actually ask me if the inquiry want to go there and ask those sorts of questions, then that's on them. There is enough evidence from enough different witnesses and that about my relationship with a former Conservative councillor Andy Coles that they shouldn't need to ask those questions. But if they do, then that's on them. I've said that, and if I can't answer it at the time, then I will say I can't answer it. I'm not going to answer it. I've been bracing myself. I've had 7 years to do that, and I think by the time November comes, I might be ready.
Sure.
To go ahead and answer these questions.
You were there when other women who've been deceived in sexual relationships by undercover cops gave their evidence. You were there for Jenny and B, and also Madeline during the first phase. You know the tone of what the questions are. I think like Madeline's, there was certain sections of Madeline's that was really blow by blow, which really I thought was inappropriate.
I think I find it harder to listen to other people having these questions. I think I feel more for other people having to, the awkwardness and that, and seeing, how difficult it is. And also with Jenny, I was in the same room with her, and, when she was getting emotional, but because she was getting angry, and she wanted a break, and whoever was asking her the questions, and I wasn't prepared to give her a break. At that point, I was ready to get up and switch the thing off, so she needs a break, give her a break. So I think I get angrier listening to other people's evidence. Hopefully I'll be able to keep it together on my own, giving my own. But if they want to ask those questions, then that's on them. I think I don't know of any other public inquiries that sort of ask so many intimate sexual questions of people, but at the moment sometimes it feels like it's an inquiry into my early sex life, and it's gross. I don't want to answer some questions, but the fact that former Conservative councillor Andy Coles is lying his arse off about us even having a relationship, then I've got to answer those questions. And that's fine, I'm prepared to do that. It's going to be difficult to listen to him calling me a liar. That's one of the things that I know is going to happen, and that he's basically, I think all the officers can do now is, because we know a lot of the things that they've done, because it just shows them in such a bad light, the Met are apologising for what they've done, they've accepted these bastards, all the things that they did. And the only way I think that these officers can try and mitigate the damage to themselves is to try and paint us as the worst possible people that they can. I've read in reports about myself some pretty incorrect facts, but also I don't have a criminal record. But
Right.
Reading what I've read about myself, you wouldn't think so. I've been arrested a few times and that, but I don't have a criminal record.
It'd be pretty difficult to be involved in the kind of activism of the time period without getting some spurious arrests. I think a lot of people don't really get when we're talking about the police inquiry, and it's why a lot of liberals get really outraged about certain aspects of it, like the cost and the fact they're harassing people who aren't breaking the law. That's what you get for going to protests. If you've ever been involved in any kind of direct action, like hunt sabbing or anything like that, then unjustifiable arrests are just par for the course. Myself and many other people have made a serious addition to our income by challenging arrests over the years, because unless you're litigious, the police will keep doing those sort of things, because protest is considered a form of criminality by British policing. If you've been an activist, then you've probably been arrested at some point. Maybe not. This is not to shame anybody who hasn't been arrested, but it's given. But the fact that none of those charges stuck meant they should be viewed as like the spurious things that they are, right? But that's not how it gets spun.
No, and when you're looking at like a former judge and someone with that sort of history, I think it feels as though there's no smoke without fire. No, there was a whole lot of smoke and there was very little fire. But in some ways it was like cat and mouse with the police. It was like they would arrest us at the beginning of the day and then they would de-arrest us at the end of the day. And sometimes it was just like to keep us out of, separate us from the hunt, basically. And it was like, and like you say, until you start suing and until they realise they can't do that, and it's even like arrest for trespass, for that good old civil matter. So the thing is, in a way, you're not doing your job properly if you're not arrested. But when you look at people of a certain age and a certain social class and stuff, it's a black mark.
Yeah, particularly the social class element. This is something which, when we heard recently that Mittings decided that he's not going to have any form of panel to advise him. Regular listeners may remember some time ago we were campaigning for him to have a panel to advise him all the way through, but he said no, he would just have a small one at the end to advise him on the outcomes. He's decided to ditch that because of the time restraints.
Yeah.
Which, interesting enough, we just sat in a pub around the corner from the Home Office right now. We've just, and a few other people have been at the Home Office delivering a letter demanding that the inquiry not be forced to finish by 2026, which is a weird thing to be campaigning for.
Yeah.
But it shows the way in which, Mitting as a man comes from a very particular place, and I think that he still doesn't really understand the impact in terms of about these units really were doing. And I think that, and a lot of that comes down to his own gilded, privileged existence, and his failure to take any other views on board with that endangers the final report, really. I say that as if I think the final report's going to be any use at all in the first place.
Yeah, obviously going to be sitting in front of him in a couple of months giving evidence. I'll bow to your opinion on that. And I won't offer one of my own.
Fair enough.
But it's such a divide. I feel that us and him thing, and it was quite good actually to see. I think for people like Dave Morris, watching sort of Mitting respond to Dave Morris giving evidence, that was actually, I felt slightly encouraged that it's when someone like Dave, you could see like Mitting smiling at some of the things that he said, and it seemed as he had a bit of understanding and a bit of respect for Dave. And then it's when you hear someone like Dave speak, and then opposite ends of the spectrum, you've got Trevor Morris, Carlton King. And then we've got him speaking, and just how objectionable and how obnoxious and just vile he was. And actually
utterly disingenuous. Utterly disingenuous.
Yeah.
And all of them, it's been a parade. Some of them are very polite with it. They claim to be very forgetful about it. Nobody can sit and hear that week in, week out and not feel how disingenuous all the undercover officers have been.
Yeah.
And you compare that with someone like, obviously, a lot of the people who've been given evidence from the civilian side maybe not used to those environments so much. They're a little bit stifled in their delivery, but that is not the case with Dave Morris. He practically lives in this environment, and he communicates incredibly well. And it's, oh look, an honest man, an honest man who knows how to talk to the court, and you can't help but feel like that cuts through.
Yeah, especially when you have his side of the evidence, and then the other side you have, Roger, is that a bomb? Pierce, finding bombs left, right and centre. It's chalk and cheese. And I think that's how it just is. I think generally our people, yes, it is difficult to listen to some of the people giving evidence and that, but it's decent people. And these cops just don't come across as that. And I think I said before, I had to get up and leave when Trevor Morris was giving evidence, because it's just what a vile person. All I can do is just be honest. That still lays bare a lot of personal details of mine. And it's also, although I have anonymity, but it's slightly identifying, you know, because I have to talk about my past and things. But I also feel that it's like I have to be honest, because I know that former Conservative councillor Andy Coles is not going to be honest and is going to lie through his teeth. I feel that I have to be that much more honest and that much more open about things that perhaps I don't really want to talk about, but I've had to, because I think I have nothing to hide. I'm not lying. I think I was just like, I have a fear that I think people aren't going to believe me because I'm just not a former Conservative councillor. Not that, as actually I've said that, that's all for the good. And not that it means that he's anything like trustworthy. But because of our different positions, I've always felt that I won't be believed. But then it isn't just me, it's other people that did know about our relationship, and people that I haven't spoke to, so I don't know what they know about my relationship. I made it clear, if they knew, then they spoke to my solicitor. I didn't want to speak to them because I don't want anyone to say that I influence them. So I don't know what they're sort of saying.
Sure.
I am getting some of the disclosure and stuff, and it's going to be a lot, and I think that's one of the things that I've got to harden myself to, is the character assassination that I know is coming, because that's all that they can do to make themselves look better, is to make us look worse. And one thing I have noticed that reading a lot of the disclosure is that any possible chance they can call us or me an extremist or violent extremist, they throw that out so many times. They're trying to paint a picture. And the fact that they wouldn't redact my arrests, it's not important. If I don't have a criminal record, I don't think my arrests are important. The only arrests that I have had have been for things like assault on police, you know. But
which for those who are not used to the British legal system sounds really bad, but actually, I mean, it just means that the cop claims you touched them, usually when they're like beating you up, right? Like generally, it's the kind of charge you get when you're coming out of casualty after getting knocked around.
Yeah, one of those charges, what I did end up in casualty that night, right. And I ended up with this charge of, I think it was assault on police and a fray or something, but completely ridiculous, is the charge of punching an officer over my left shoulder with my right arm. Which,
Ninja!
which we've been practising while sat in the pub, and unless I had no shoulder blades and no elbow and eyes in the back of my head, it's impossible to actually do. But it's the ridiculousness of these charges. But the fact I asked for it to be redacted, because apart from all this stuff, I actually have a life and actually have a job, and some of the people that I work know something about this, but unless they've been an activist, don't realise that you get all these spurious charges and stuff just for being a bit of a nuisance to the police. You get all sorts of charges. One of the charges I got, it was assault on police or something, purely came because I'd been arrested by a PC suckling, and I'm sorry, but who's going to let that go? And I didn't let it go. And the entire ride back to the police station, I just took the piss out of this name.
Laughing all the way to the cop shop. Like.
Yeah, and like mud. So I'd been arrested out sabbing, so of course there was mud all over the back of the police car, and I just, for I don't know, however long it took to get back to the police station, I was just taking the piss out of PC suckling. It was, did you have to be a copper with a name like that? I was a little bit shocked when I got back to the police station and was told I'd apparently punched him in the testicles. Completely, just ridiculous, but it's because I relentlessly took the piss out of him. I don't blame him. I was fairly obnoxious about it, but you know, that was...
You still blame them for that. I mean,
yeah, I mean,
It's a different level. Do you know what I mean? They have this power over us that they can just do things like that. Why couldn't he just take the piss back? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. I mean, it can't have been the first time he heard it. Let's face it.
Let's face
but,
it, dude. Seriously.
No, but the charge, there was I was arrested on another charge as well, like having my face covered in a public place, like the highwayman. The law dating back to 18 something or other that applied to highwaymen, and so the charges was dropped, and so it was nothing and nothing. But apparently the inquiry felt it was important. That should be included.
Have they included his disciplinary record, any complaints against him?
Oh, unusually, they haven't done that. I particularly asked because I said, OK, if you seem to think that my non-criminal charges are so important that you think that they need to be included in this inquiry, then did he have any disciplinary charges whilst he was employed as a police officer, particularly around sexual misconduct? Because that is, knowing him, I would imagine there might be some. So can we have then his disciplinary, his conduct? And I don't think they replied. I think that might have been one of the many things that they didn't reply to. And also his time before he was a former Conservative councillor, his time as a Conservative councillor, were there any complaints about him and his sexual conduct? Because obviously that's another thing as well about the inquiry and about a lot of these things, is we actually know far more than we can say. Going back to his disciplinary record whilst he was a councillor, then that also should be relevant. But apparently the inquiry doesn't seem to think that it is.
It's ridiculous when what's been included is charges against you which just got dropped that had no validity whatsoever. Yeah, any accusation against him is not even asking for that. It's a ridiculous comparison, the fact they're not doing any of that, especially given what he did and what we know he did.
Exactly.
And what the police admit he did. One of the things that came out of the last set of hearings was that the police admitting that, yes, Andy Coles engaged in sexual abuse whilst he was deployed. And they apologised for it. Which I wouldn't say the apology is worth that much, but the recognition of it is worth something.
Yeah, exactly. And when the opening statement of the Metropolitan Police, Peter Skelton, when he made his statement and he named him as an officer, which I wasn't expecting, but perhaps I should have done because he had been named and it had been accepted in the apology that they gave to us, the second lot of women that the Met apologised to for these relationships. But I hadn't expected them to, because obviously David Barr went to great lengths to say an alleged relationship, and because of course he's the inquiry, so he has to sort of sit on the fence. But Peter Skelton absolutely didn't, and he named him.
We're starting to see that the institutions throw the individuals under a bus, as much as obviously the institutions are at fault as well. But those individuals are really at fault, and their denial of it. Coles isn't the only one who's denying his relationships. There are other officers who still deny it, which is just overwhelming evidence. Never mind people coming forward, but other people who were aware of them having relationships. These are not secretive affairs that took place, they were public relationships. There are other officers who are still denying it. And we saw when Vincent Harvey was being questioned after Madeleine had given her evidence, and he just broke, really. He hadn't admitted to it at all, and then when it was put to him in questioning, and I mean it was all via video link, he didn't actually see the whites of his eyes. He probably sat in his living room at the time. The very sober questioning of David Barr just broke him down, and he started sweating like a big red hairy bollock on the screen as he was just exposed for being the sexual abuser that he is. And who knows how Coles will respond, but we live in hope.
I just don't know what to expect at all. The fact that he's an absolute narcissist and a liar, and the fact that he hasn't pulled out of giving evidence so far, and not like John Lipscomb, HN87, who apparently is now, within the last week, he's become too ill to give evidence.
Yeah, this is infuriating. There's not that many undercover officers giving evidence at this next set of hearings. It was meant to be 5 undercover officers and 5 managers. And now it's going to be 4. One of those is somebody who was meant to give evidence during phase 1 and has had to be moved. Just technically, he should have been part of phase 1. So I mean that takes us down to about only 3 undercover officers for phase 2. Those are Coles, Lambert, and HN1,
Matt Rayner.
That used to cover name Matt Rayner. They are pretty significant deployment, all of whom will be very interesting, I'm sure. But we'll hear from a lot of civilians, we'll have the introduction of evidence of others, and we'll have 5 managers, so there'll be other things revealed during that time. But it's slim pickings again, really.
Mike Chitty, could have been giving evidence, and his evidence would have been very interesting, because there's no love lost between him and some of the other officers and managers. The way they mismanaged him is quite interesting. And Lipscomb as well, John Lipscomb, and we only found out at the beginning of tranche 1, phase 1, that he had admitted to having a relationship. Yeah, there's a lot of questions there, but suddenly they're all dropping off. And John Dines could have been giving evidence, should have been giving evidence, but of course with the inquiry not compelling anyone to give evidence, he's the other side of the world and won't give evidence. But the stuff that he has said, what an absolutely vile...
Horrendous.
The attitude and everything is just, it's very triggering reading some of the evidence, some of the stuff that he's said and the lies. That's the thing as well, is we can't, hopefully, once a lot of the evidence has come out and that, pointing out some of the things and the factual inaccuracies, but some of the rubbish that has been said and the rubbish that has been directed at us as CPs trying to justify what they did when there's no justification. John Dines is an absolute piece of work, and also Lambert as well, and the stuff that they said to try and protect him from what was common knowledge at the time about him, setting the incendiary device that burned down Debenhams. It was common knowledge at the time, and it's going to be interesting because there's lots of stuff to come out that also corroborates the fact that he did this and the fact that the police knew about it as well.
Yeah, there's a lot with Lambert, and there's quite a lot of witnesses being called for Lambert. I'm not sure how many civilian witnesses have been called.
It's about 10, I think. 10,
wow, okay.
Yeah.
So there'll be a lot of civilian witnesses this phase of hearings.
We hear from only 2 of the women that he had relationships with. Well, obviously it was the 4 women.
Yeah, and a son.
Yeah, one of which had his child. And I guess there'd be a statement. I'm not sure whether his son is actually giving evidence. He did an awful lot of stuff whilst he was undercover. And let's just hope that the inquiry don't redact a lot of the stuff.
In the last set of hearings, HN33 used the cover name Lee Bosner. She was meant to be giving evidence up until 2 weeks before her actual hearing, and then she backed out. We still haven't had an explanation from the inquiry, one of the many questions they've not answered.
This is the one that looks like Sarah Connor from Terminator?
Yes.
Is it in her dungarees and
yes. There's some great photos of her that were shared at the time, which the inquiry published, which was very good of them. I got the impression they were going to be secret, but they published them, so it was fair play to them.
I don't know why they had the breakdown afterwards, but
some issues with it afterwards. But all those photographs in 33, Lee Bosner are in public domain and easily found. John Dines lives in Australia, and supposedly the inquiry only has auspices over England and Wales, so those people living outside of that. It's not even attempting to force anybody, but it doesn't even have the ability outside of Wales and England. It may be the case that some of these very few officers will find a way out of it, just hop on a plane and disappear when it comes to it. I get the impression that Coles is such a self-publicist that he couldn't resist his moment. But somewhat like Roger Pierce, he couldn't resist being there.
There is an element of the media whore about him, I would say, having read quite a lot of things that he's said. But yeah, I think this is the ridiculous thing, is that I think like some of these officers are still standing by any kind of justification that they seem to think that they had. Like Trevor Morris, he was basically saving the country from these subversives and stuff, and that is the line that they're standing on, and it is just utterly ridiculous. It's as though they've fooled themselves into thinking that they were actually saving the world. It's sad, actually, and it's pathetic, and I'm sure that's exactly what he's going to do. But there is the fact that he thinks he's that important. The fact that he went on to be Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Peterborough and Cambridge, because God, he's such an important person, and a councillor for Peterborough.
The least popular elected position in British history, and like the least known. He was the deputy of one of them.
Oh my God, we scraped the barrel. But obviously, complete speculation. Allegedly, he was not given the opportunity of either you resign or we're going to fire you. So he decided to resign. That's one of the things I do that I was told. But yeah, and I think actually the Police and Crime Commissioner that elected him, I think, was actually fired for some sort of offences. But he's obviously floated at the top of that particular bucket of shit. But yeah, I don't know why they seem to think that they're like that important, that they have so much to be respected for.
Because they're so self-obsessed, I'm sure they're listening. Andy Coles, any of the others probably listen. Let us know. Why don't you answer? We're not difficult people to find. Tell us why you think you're so bloody self-important. What's your self-diagnosis? Why do you think you're so bloody special?
Someone like Trevor Morris, who seems to think he's got so much importance to say that people will want to listen. And sometimes only 2 people, Trevor, actually listen and really don't care.
I tried to... Well, his most recent podcast episode is about the racist riots. So I thought, maybe he's going to... his own background or whatever. I just couldn't get through it, mate. I just couldn't cope with it.
I have to be honest. I can't bear his voice. I've seen his face, and I just can't bear his voice. There I am. This is what I can't remember, like the 4th or 5th podcast that I'm doing. But once this is finished, I'm going to change my name and disappear. I don't want to be. Yeah, I don't want to be. I don't want to be doing this crap again.
Sure.
I don't want to be speaking about stuff and that. I do because I feel it's important and I have to. But. Yeah, I don't want to put myself in this position.
You're meant to be one of the regulars on this podcast.
Yeah, all right, when the inquiry's over, Tom, okay. I'm just going to change my name and disappear. I don't want any of this stuff. That was the thing, is I've never, at any meetings or anything, I would never speak. The person that former Conservative councillor Andy Coles knew, I would never speak at meetings. If there was too many people there, I wouldn't go because I have some real severe social anxiety. I don't want to put myself in a position like this. I don't feel that I can speak for anybody else, so I just speak for myself, and sometimes I probably shouldn't. I don't want to be in a position like this. I think it's important. That's the thing, is I want people to know, and I think the whole campaign around former Conservative councillor Andy Coles was, I needed people to know what kind of person he was, so that he would not be in a position of power to then do what he did to me to somebody else. I was vulnerable and young, and he should not be in that position. And that tipped the scales, sort of me keeping quiet and not saying anything, that tipped it for me. Stupidly, I would feel responsible had he done something to someone else because I hadn't spoken up. It's that ridiculous guilt that people feel, so I had to do that. Speak because people need to know, and that's the thing, that's the frustrating thing, is so many people don't know anything about this public inquiry and all of this stuff, and it's like we need to shine a light into this whole cesspit of police. And so I do that, but once it's done, I'm probably not going to go away entirely, but I don't want to be a spokesperson for people. I don't. If I never have to do another podcast again, no offence, Tom, then that's great.
On that note, you'll be coming along to the other bits of the inquiry before you give evidence?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So we're back at it from the 30th of September, back to the trenches. Follow along. We'll be using the hashtag #SpyCops on social media. I try and report what's happening. I think Jessica really gets the heart of the issues on Twitter.
I rage tweet and I swear lots. I didn't realise I swore as much as I swear until you brought it up.
I was saying what a good thing it was. Despite what she just said, Jessica, I'm sure, will continue to be a regular feature on this podcast series. She's been on loads of episodes in the past. Some relating to Shitface, the former Conservative councillor Andy Coles. But others relating to other things, because she follows things closely and is engaged in the entire topic. But thanks for joining us. Please check out previous episodes. Tell your friends about it. If you're up for giving us a review on whatever you listen to this podcast on, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, not everything allows you to give a review, but if you can, or give us 5 stars or whatever, that would really help. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks very much. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Bye for now.
Bye.